Hi everybody, my name is Captain George McLean, first governor appointed to a British settlement in a land then best known as the White Man's Grave. When I arrived on a beautiful day in February in the year of our Lord, 1830. I'd like to tell you of said settlement, its wars and its times of peace and what it should become. So don't lose your heads when we take a long journey back in time. All began in 1471. When some courageous seamen from Portugal, paid by Fernando Gomez, completed their voyage to a yet unknown coast in West Africa. What they discovered there must have exceeded their expectations and made their eyes shine. They found gold, purchasable from the inhabitants in such a large quantity, so that they called the place Mina, the mine. News of this lucrative coast spread rapidly, and with it came the danger of rivals. As a protection against those, the King John II of Portugal sent an expedition to build a fortified warehouse, the first fort, called Elmina. But this wasn't enough to keep other European nations from coming too, claiming their share of the profit and setting up trading posts, so that eventually forts of half a dozen nations marked the coastline, triggering fierce competition, though only of commercial nature. Finally, in 1874, after some back and forth, the country became a British colony, named Gold Coast Colony. Reasons herefor were desired prestige and status for England, that at this time were associated with colonial possession, but probably mainly to secure the land's vast resources, hence economic profit. But not all people bear foreign authority so easily, and at the Gold Coast, the centre of rebellion lied north of the coast, the Ashanti Empire. Many wars have been fought between the Ashanti and the British. The last of them was called the War of the Golden Stool. In the eyes of the Ashanti, this stool contained the soul of the people, and represented the good fortune of the nation. The then governor, Sir Frederick Hodgson, thought that the British could never completely establish their control as long as the stool stayed in the hands of the Ashanti. Consequently, he made his way through the forest to the capital of the Ashanti Empire and proclaimed in a highly offensive manner, "Where is the golden stool? Why am I not sitting on the golden stool at this moment? I am the representative of the paramount power. Why have you relegated me to this chair?" In response, Queen Mother Ya Asantewa spoke to her people. "No European could have dared speak to chiefs of Asante in the way the governor spoke to you this morning. Is it true that the bravery of Asante is no more? I cannot believe it. I cannot be. I must say this. If you, the men of Asante, will not go forward, then we will. We, the women, will. I shall call upon my fellow women. We will fight. We will fight till the last of us falls in the battlefield." The Ashanti, led by Ya Asantewa, besieged the British troops, governor included. But as they allowed the women and the sick soldiers to leave, Hodgson was able to smuggle out a note. This led to the mobilization of a strong British army that marched to the place of the siege and defeated the Ashanti. The aftermath being that Ya Asantewa was exiled, and the Ashanti Empire was annexed to the Gold Coast Colony in January 1902. At the same time, the more northern section, called Northern Territories, was formally declared a British protectorate, and after World War I, the colony Togoland to the east was seized from Germany and became part of the Gold Coast Colony too. Now the influence of colonial rule on the Gold Coast Colony can be divided into 5 main sections: government, economics, education, healthcare, and religion. Let's first talk about government and its indirect rule. The chiefs, traditional rulers, ruled their people, directed by the British government through its officials in the colony. Unfortunately, this did not happen with respect to the traditions of the native people. Chiefs would be installed where there had never been any. Others would be sent into exile, taken away power, or given more than they actually had among their people. During the following decades, the colonial authorities would gradually reduce the chiefs' overall powers through a series of legislations, reaching a point where the chiefs did no longer serve their people but the colonial authorities. The economics of the Gold Coast colony were closely connected to the trade to Europe. At first, the traders came mainly seeking spices, ivory, and gold. Overseas, however, demand for slave labour grew year by year, and so Gold Coast colony started exporting more and more of the human raw material. The English transported in some years as many as 50,000 slaves. The abolition of slave trade in all British colonies in 1807 was not well received by many natives. The Ashanti depended on it to secure their military position by collecting regular tribes, including slaves of conquered surrounding states. It also was their main source of wealth, together with the plunder of war. At the same time, many inhabitants of the Gold Coast colony earned their livelihood as middlemen in the slave market, and in this way lost all their income. The next few years, African middlemen tried to keep the now illegal slave trade up by evading the British naval control using slave ships, built for speed and flying the Spanish flag. It was not until the abolition of slavery in America that export of slaves from the Gold Coast stopped completely. Luckily, a new industry developed, the cocoa industry. The first cocoa seedlings were brought to the Gold Coast by the Basel missionaries in 1857. Soon, cocoa was the main item of export. Actually, it were the cheap supplies of cocoa beans from the commercial company of the Basel Mission in the Gold Coast that maintained the Swiss chocolate industry in long term, especially during the First and Second World War. All in all, the colonial authorities did not try, and often even kept their country from industrializing, but mainly focused on production of goods of the primary sector, as for example cocoa beans, and exporting those goods to Europe. Who knows, maybe otherwise the Gold Coast colony would have replaced Switzerland as the chocolate country. With this policy, the colony itself had to rely on imports from Europe, but at least they benefited a lot from the construction of railways and roads from the transportation of goods. The introduction of Western education in the colony well displays another substantial reason to why the Gold Coast was colonized. It originates in the cultural arrogance of the European people, who regarded anyone different as being culturally inferior. They felt obligated to civilize and uplift, and therefore to educate the African natives. Colonialism was justified as being the white man's burden, forceful entry to Africa being the Europeans' divine mission and duty. The first schools to spread the colony were Roman Catholic, as well as Protestant mission schools, as governmental attempts to establish public schools failed. By the beginning of the 20th century, the number of government schools rose because of new ordinances. Also, secondary education, which had lagged behind for a long time, was introduced, the missions leading the way again. One of the most outstanding schools founded was the Prince of Wales College at Achimota. Its staff included both Africans and Europeans, one of the original members being Dr. Agri. His ideal was the cooperation of the people of both types of skin color. He expressed this by his example of piano keys, after which a shield for the college would be designed after his death. You can play a tune of sorts on the black keys, and you can play a tune of sorts on the white keys. But for harmony, you must use both the black and the white. The College of Achimota was founded by the governor Sir Frederick Gordon Gukisberg, a descendant of an immigrant from Bern, Switzerland, who influenced the colony in many good ways. Thanks to him, the first governmental hospital was constructed, relieving the missionary societies as the only providers of modern Western medicine in the Gold Coast colony. It was not only the finest and most modern medical institution in Africa at the time, but also the first teaching hospital. By now we have heard of plenty domains affected by Christian missions, newly introduced crops, healthcare, education, and so on. Yet we shouldn't forget one of the primary reasons for their presence, namely to convert the African people to Christianity. The initial response here was rather negative, because the people already had their indigenous religions, which were traditionalist, but in their eyes neither uncivilized nor barbarian, as the Europeans might have seen them. But over time, more and more people joined the Christian faith. Next to Christianity, Islam also spread in the colony, especially due to Muslim soldiers who had been recruited for local wars in the 19th century. But the Gold Coast colony didn't stay a colony forever, and today it's known under a completely different name. In the Second World War, the Gold Coast colony gave over 65,000 men to various services during the war. They had been promised pensions and jobs, but those promises were never fulfilled. That is why on the 27th of February of 1948, a group of ex-servicemen started a peaceful march of protest, the goal being to bring a petition to the governor requesting compensation for their war efforts. Due to a change of route towards the government house at Christiansborg, they were stopped by the police, who refused to let them pass and ultimately shot in the crowd. 2 men were killed and 4 or 5 wounded before the parade could be turned back. As a reaction to the violence, the people of Accra broke out in riots, in which both African and European-owned stores were attacked. Held responsible for the riots were a group of activists known as the Big Six. Therefore, they all got arrested. One of those activists was Kwame Nkrumah. After he was released out of jail, he soon left his former party, the UGCC. The account of his break is told in his own words. "I was confronted by an excited crowd. 'Resign,' they shouted, as soon as they saw me resign and lead us, and we shall complete the struggle together. I realized at once that they were sincere and determined. Above all, I knew that they needed me to lead them. I had stirred the deepest feelings, and they had shown their confidence in me. I could never fail them now. Quickly, I made my mind up. 'I will lead you,' I said. 'This very day I will lead you.'" He built up the Conventional People's Party, with him as the leader. Soon its influence was widespread. They started a campaign of so-called positive action, demanding immediate self-government. Nkrumah threatened the British that as a last resort they would go on strike, boycott, and non-cooperate. All of this, however, should be based on the principle of absolute non-violence, after the example of Gandhi and India's struggle for independence. On the 8th day of January in 1950, the party declared a nationwide strike and boycott. But its non-violent character was very difficult to maintain, and it soon escalated into lawlessness. As an aftermath, Nkrumah was again arrested. Still in jail, he was elected the first African Prime Minister. The governor then chose to release Nkrumah because of the mass of people behind him. Nkrumah's followers already waited at the prison gate and, lifting him shoulder high, cried him in triumph through the streets. In the following years, the Gold Coast, under Kwame Nkrumah's leadership, moved rapidly towards independence. Luckily, the British had always planned to grant the Gold Coast eventually self-government, though for a long time the main aim of this plan probably was its existence, justifying colonization as a temporary time in which the country needed to be prepared for the yet unattainable autonomy. Finally, on the glorious 6th day of March 1957, the Gold Coast colony gained its independence and was renamed Ghana. In a speech, Nkrumah reminded his fellow citizens that "we have a duty to prove to the world that Africans can conduct their own affairs with efficiency and tolerance, and through the exercise of democracy. We must set an example to all Africa.
At long last, the battle has ended. And thus, Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever. And here again, I want to take the opportunity to thank the chiefs and people of this country, the youth, the farmers, the women.
Even though Ghana is a free country now, the effects of British rule are still noticeable in today's society. English is still the official language, but most people do not speak it fluently and stick to their indigenous languages instead. Christianity is the major religion due to the missionary work. About 70% of Ghana's population is Christian. To this day, the country's borders are the same as they were pierced together by the British. Architecture in urban countries is dominated by European-style buildings. The legal system is based on English common law and customary law. Economy hasn't changed much either. It relies mainly on cocoa and minerals. Even Ghana's government has evolved out of British rule. Today, it is a republic with a president, a parliament, and a multi-party system. Thanks for your attention. Hereby, I tell you farewell and benach late.
I want to take the opportunity to thank the chiefs and people of this country, the youth, the farmers, the women who have so nobly fought and won this battle. Also,